Welcome back to BarnBuiltFabrications, and today we're going to be introducing a new vehicle to the channel. If you've been following along with the channel and the different builds and videos, I'm sure that you've seen this floating in the background of a lot of those videos. It's a truck that has been very close to me personally and been with me for literally my entire life. And it's actually not the truck that's behind me here. It's actually this truck behind me. And looking at the title, it probably makes a lot more sense. This is the red truck.
You can see the riding on the pavement. Young kids that growing up in basements.
Just as a disclaimer to everybody, this video is not going to be actually starting working on this truck. However, it is just kind of going in the background behind it, which to me personally, just like I did on the C10 whenever we started that project, the history behind a vehicle and, especially in this case, the sentimental value has a lot of weight to the build on top of just being the vehicle and how you build it. So I like to take the time before I start projects, especially one that means as much as this truck does to me, and just kind of go into that detail. So if that's not really your thing, you should check out some of our other videos and definitely check out the videos as we start working on this truck. But for everybody else who's interested in kind of finding out the history of this truck and where it came from, the story behind it, definitely hang in there because we're going to be talking about it. So this is the red truck. It's not a red truck, but it is the red truck, which is the name that I've had for it since I was a very, very young kid. And so the information behind this truck, it was originally, and I'd say that kind of foreshadowing a little bit, a 1986 Ford F-150 short bed Stepside, and it originally came with a 300 straight six with a 4-speed manual transmission, 4-wheel drive truck, and we can kind of go around and I'll show you some of that other stuff as we go along with this introduction. So with that in mind, this truck has been in my family for a very long time. Originally it was my great uncle's truck that my dad bought it from him, actually the same year that I was born, 1999, for anybody who might have been interested. And ever since my dad had it at our house growing up, I fell in love with this truck. It meant the world to me, and nothing's changed. If anything, it's only gotten even stronger, the bond that I have with this truck since then. So, but kind of going forward with the timeline on the truck, after he had it for a long time, I had a strong connection to it, and my uncle, he had a plowing company, and he got into an accident with his Bronco that he used for plowing. So my dad gave the truck to him to use on a semi-short-term time frame for him to be able to continue his plowing business, with the understanding that whenever I got a little bit older, this truck would then become mine again, which eventually, obviously, it did. It's behind me. It was a little, didn't go as smooth as that, but that's a song for another time. Anyways, but my uncle had it. He actually lived up the hill from my dad's house, and I would come up and check out this truck all the time just to kind of check in on it and spend some time around it. Maybe a little bit corny for a lot of people, but for the people who get it, you get it. And anyways, I officially got this truck as mine on my 10th birthday. My dad got it back from my uncle, and we got it brought back down to my dad's house at literally the bottom of the hill. And that is whenever we started working on it. So I'll try to drop in some pictures of this truck and its journey since then, since I started working on it at 10 years old. So my dad got it back down to his house at the bottom of the hill, and we started working on the truck. We got the bed taken off and started our journey on getting this restoration complete, or at least started. We have a long road ahead of us still even now. I know it's been a while. That was what, 2009, around that time frame whenever I turned 10. And so we got it down to the hill, and it was at my dad's old house there for a while. Just did a little bit of stuff. Like I said, we got the bed taken off, and it sat there for a few years, and then my dad ended up moving to a different house, and then we had the truck towed from the first house that he had over to his new house, which it was originally started off where it was outside whenever we started working on it. And at the new house, he had a bigger garage that we were able to get it into, which is a huge step for us, and definitely something I was happy to get it out of the elements. Again, if you haven't picked up with the plow truck story part of this was a truck that was up north, and that is when a really difficult time happened for me. The truck was on the tow truck And I went inside the garage to sweep out the floor and get it prepped to get the truck put in. And whenever I came back outside after getting the floor swept, the frame on the truck had actually buckled. And it was pretty much sitting in a V on the flatbed. And that was a pretty terrible experience there as somebody who's as connected to this truck as I was. But I didn't let it stop me. We were able to get the truck in the garage, and the very first thing I did was I broke out the washcloth and the bucket, and I gave this thing a bath because I needed to have something to kind of uplift the spirits a little bit, because it wasn't gonna, although it was a big challenge, and obviously with that situation, it wasn't gonna get me down. I wasn't gonna quit on the truck, and I was gonna keep on going. And so through that whole experience, we got the truck broken down, honestly, to pretty much how you see it now. We got the cab taken off the frame, we got the axles pulled off, the bed was taken off, we had that mostly disassembled, took the whole front clip off, pulled the engine, transmission, transfer case. The engine was very, very interesting process to get pulled out. Didn't use an engine hoist. We actually drilled, it was a 2-story garage, and we drilled a hole through one of the beams in the ceiling, put a 4x4 post underneath it, ran a chain up through it, hooked it to the engine, and I grabbed on that sucker and pulled. And it was heavy. And that was kind of our redneck ghetto engine hoist cherry picker situation that we used. So anyways, started working on the truck there and getting it broken down. So I have to really give this truck a lot of credit, not just for kickstarting my automotive passion and pretty much my mechanical inclination starting to work on vehicles, but I learned in the same way that my father learned from his stepfather growing up, where he put me out in the garage and he said, okay, this is the next thing that we need to work on or get taken apart. I'm gonna go to the store, have it done by the time I get back. And that gave me the opportunity to be able to look at things and say, okay, I need to get this off, or I need to get this task done. How can I do it? How does it work? How does it go together? How does it come apart? What tools do I need? What about if I have a rusty bolt? It's different situations like that that make you really think outside of the box to overcome any situations that you run into. And with that, you know, my dad he was obviously around. He didn't just leave me, of course. But if I was, you know, really struggling, he'd come in and give me a hand. Or if I was doing something one way, but he knew of a better way, he would come in and say, hey, you know, I see you're doing that, but try this way out instead. And then he just give me those helpful little pushes to get me on the right direction, instead of, you know, him doing it, me watching, you know. And obviously I wasn't on my own, but it gave me an opportunity to, you know, get the guidance that I needed without being too much, to where I could look at this and, you know, just problem solve. And that is a trait that has really grown in my passion in engineering. I know you guys don't know a whole bunch about my background, but it's in engineering and construction and everything. Maybe one day we'll get in the video kind of, you know, I guess, introducing myself. But anyways, with that, I was able to take those lessons and not just apply it to this truck or vehicles in general, but life as a whole, to be able to look at problems as I came across them and try to think out of the box and work through it. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity that I had to learn that way, to both bond with my father, learn so much from him, as well as being able to just look at things and figure things out on my own. So with all that, I'll get you guys walked around and I'll kind of show you the different stuff that I have going on behind me on this truck. Obviously we have a whole bunch of different parts, and I'll explain that. This is really a hodgepodge of 4 vehicles that's behind me that are all gonna fuse, which is, you know, we're gonna get back on this white truck too and go through that. So that is the history of the truck. Now let's get into the future of it. So a little funny joke, this here, as my sister and I thought it was when we were younger, is not a frog in a suit. If you don't know what it is, ask your parents. And then, yeah. So moving over to this bed, on the Stepside beds for 86, and honestly a lot of the older Stepside beds came with wood in them instead of a steel bottom, a steel floor. And that was kind of the downfall to the frame on the original truck. And so what happens with that, although it's really cool and it looks nice, especially aftermarket, whenever you have the nice stained wood with the chrome slats and everything, the original wood, what happens is over time, obviously it's wood, it breaks down, rots, decays, and then especially the truck being used as a plow truck, you have all the elements and the road salt and everything that gets kicked up from the back tires and sits on the frame, and that's what rusted it from the cab back. Honestly, from the cab forward was pretty solid. So we're still going to be a Stepside bed, and it's going to be a wood bed, but we're going to do that nice stain and chrome slots and everything. This here behind me is actually not the original bed. I do have it, it's broken down, but we're going to have a hodgepodge of the original bed, obviously this black one that you've probably seen floating behind, and then this other blackish reddish one as well. And we're going to take the best parts from each and make one solid good bed out of it. Obviously we're still going to have to get a couple new parts, but we're going to be bringing that around. So I just want to kind of go in detail about what caused the issue and the bed on there and the direction we're going on that. So moving over to the cab, this is the original cab, obviously for the red truck. And unfortunately, at least for now, it's not going anywhere, but we're going to be using the donor truck cab, at least for now, which was that white truck that's right here that I started the video off, and I'll get over this in a minute. But this is the original truck. I have all the trim pieces for it inside of it, and what we're going to be doing is taking this entire interior, the dash, all the front clip, the bed, pretty much do an entire body swap onto this truck, this new one, this white one, and make a really solid unit out of it. So kind of coming around, I'll show you some of the trim that's on the inside of the truck and the dash. We're going to be keeping this original dash that's in the truck. Like I said, we're going to be swapping it over, and we're going to be keeping the same bench seat. This is the original bench seat, and I want to keep a lot of the nostalgia to it, you know, the different little quirks on the inside, so that it's like pretty much how it was from my childhood. The outside though, or at least the mechanics behind it, it's going to be a little pretty crazy project. So we have the front fenders over here that are sitting here. So we're gonna, again, put this front clip on this truck. So it's gonna look like a 1986 short bed, Stepside F-150. And I'll explain this truck here in a minute. We do have the original engine over here. This is the 300 straight six. And a little backstory about this. Obviously, we're not in Pennsylvania anymore, which is where the truck was. My dad moved out of that house that this was in the garage, and we had to bring it down here to Florida. Very happy to finally get it down here. But on the trip, what we ended up doing, and I'll drop some more pictures and videos in of that as well. I ended up renting a big U-Haul truck, and we took all the parts and loaded it up in there, because obviously in the condition that this is in, you're not going to put it on an open car trailer. You're certainly not going to drive it. So that was certainly a feat in its own. We didn't have the tractor. We were loading the cab and the engine and everything up into it, the axles. So that was interesting. And I got really sick on the trip, so I was pretty useless. So I give a lot of credit to Julia, who's my cameraman today, for the help, as well as my sister, my dad, and his girlfriend, Deborah. I do appreciate that very much from them. But on the trip, the reason why this is sitting on a tire with part of an engine stand is because my Hobo Freight engine stand that this engine was on, we hit some of those really smooth Pennsylvania highways, and the engine snapped off the engine stand and fell and put a big old hole in the floor of the U-Haul. Luckily, they didn't check that whenever we returned it. But, all right, moving on. Over here, it's a little bit of a foreshadow as well. We have the original transmission. Again, this is a Borg Warner. I forget exactly what the model is, but it is a 4-speed. It's got a first gear is granny gear, fourth is overdrive, and then we have the transfer case. And so now let's kind of get into the direction of what we're planning on doing and what the heck this white truck's for. So this truck here is a 1995 Ford F-250, and it has a 7.3 turbo diesel, Power Stroke turbo diesel. Also with a manual transmission, but it's a 5-speed. And we're gonna be putting that transfer case right here in this truck It's currently a 2-wheel drive, gonna be making it for it. This truck, like I said, it's got the 7.3 Power Stroke in it. It does run and it does drive, except for right now because the batteries are both dead. And they have dead cells or something in them, so I need to get them warranted. I have to do some research into that. However, yes, this truck does run, does drive, but it has its issues that we need to work out. I'll be doing some stuff on it. I need to put a new water pump on it. I need to do a new fuel pump as well. Certain stuff like that that's just kind of getting it running and driving. I am running into a smoking issue on this truck. It's smoking a lot of white smoke, which if you're not familiar with diesels, that's not the oil burning white smoke that you would have with a gasoline engine. Not the same thing. White smoke typically is raw unburnt fuel. Then that black smoke, whenever you hear of people saying rolling coal or you see the big black smoke that shoots out of diesels, that is partially burned fuel. And so I don't know for sure. I need to get this truck down to a local shop because I don't have the handheld computer, but I need to get a buzz test done. I have a sneaking suspicion that this either has a cracked or hung open injector and it is just dumping fuel into this truck. Because as it does run a little bit, it does clear up a little bit. I didn't see any oil in the coolant or anything, so I don't think I have a cracked injector cup or anything like that. It's not blue, I'm not losing any coolant into the engine, so head gaskets and everything should be fine as well. So we're gonna be keeping this 7.3 Power Stroke for this truck whenever we build it up, but it is going to be, I'd like to kind of build it to like that 500 horsepower mark. Probably end up coming through and putting upgraded injectors in this, new turbo, and a whole bunch of cool stuff on that, which we'll cross that bridge whenever we're at that point. But I'll bring you around to the inside of the truck. Although we're not gonna be using the front clip on this truck or really any of the interior, it's still a very solid truck and I kind of want to show you guys what we're working with. So one of my favorite parts about this truck though, is that it's pretty much completely rust free, which is something that's very nice for me to not have to deal with because rust is like cancer. It's no bueno. The only rust that I have found on this truck is on this driver's side rocker, which is right here. And it's not too bad. Obviously we're gonna have to replace this rocker, maybe come into the cab corner a little bit, but it doesn't look too bad. But aside from that, here I'll get you guys underneath, the whole floor of the truck is in great shape. The frame is in great shape. There is nothing. It is all good. Obviously, you know, some of this other stuff is light little surface rust stuff that will come off with a little bit of a wire wheel. And yeah, so interior is in pretty good shape. I mean, the dash is a little wonky, but we don't care. It's coming out. And what my plan with this truck is this, obviously they didn't make any short bed or stepside or any of that F250s. Any of the single cabs all came with an 8-foot bed, which is obviously not gonna work for us. So what I'm gonna be doing is dropping one of these tanks and I'm gonna be cutting this frame and shortening it so I could fit my stepside bed on it, obviously with that looking wonky and all over the place. We're gonna be dropping the tank. Obviously we're gonna have to knock off where they had a gooseneck hitch on here, a bunch of these different little brackets. This truck is gonna be completely gutted essentially. Frame off, and really don't wanna cut any corners. And I do wanna say this truck is not gonna be a quick build. It's gonna be long form, and we're gonna be just kind of bringing it in and out of the channel over time as we go. I really don't want to have any shortcuts with this truck for how much it means to me and the level that we're going to be building this thing, which is the next thing I want to talk about. Suspension on this truck is going to be the biggest part of this entire build. So my plan for this truck is to do air suspension, not the low rider stuff. We're not going to be doing slamming it like we are the C10, but I actually want to do an air lift. I'll probably keep this at like a 4-inch over factory base, like a ride height. And then, I don't know, depending on what size bags I have on it, we can drop this down to tuck the wheels and tires if we're at, say, a car show, or just let it sit down. And then we can also raise it to, heck, I mean, depending on the airbag, we go to 12 inches of lift if we want to. And when I do that, So obviously I'm gonna be doing the airbags, and they don't make kits for this. This is gonna be something that I'm completely fabricating from scratch, designing, measuring, fabricating, putting together, all me. A little scary, but we'll get through it. Gotta live up to the name of Barn Built Fabrications. And what I wanna do is I put a triangulated 4-link in the rear of this truck that will keep everything really stable and strong whenever we go to put our bags in there. It will keep any of the axle movement front to rear or even side to side. Triangles are the strongest shape if you're not familiar. So what the triangulated 4-link does, if you're not familiar with that, you have 4 link bars. And I could, the front I could probably show you, but that'd be a little confusing. So what we'll end up doing is we'll have a link bar on each side of the axle. On the bottom will come up and hook to the frame, obviously like I said, hook to the axle, and then we'll have another link bar on the top, and the top is going to be triangulated. And so what that does is it keeps your axle from moving front or rear, and then the triangulation keeps it from moving side to side. And that will keep the axle in almost a 0-degree swing as it travels up and down with the air ride suspension. Since we're going to be having that change in geometry, it's very important that we keep everything in the same location. That way we're not running into fenders or eating up the body or anything whenever we go to turn or drive or hit a bump, etc. So in the front, whenever I'm going to do obviously similar thing, but I'll probably do a 3-link. So what we have on that, probably gonna be a little hard, but I can actually show you on Julia's truck, her 79 here, a little bit. What we have in a 4-wheel drive front suspension on a truck is you have, 1 link here. Actually, this is a decent representation actually of what a 3-link is. So you have 2 links, one on either side of the axle that go up towards the body. So this is a wishbone style link. And what it does is obviously this is where it attaches to the frame, and then on the other end, the wishbone part, it connects as a clamp that wraps top and bottom of the axle, which is good to have that. It keeps the axle from moving front or rear, but it doesn't do anything for side to side movement. And so for that side to side movement, what we have is something that's called a panhard bar, which is this link that it goes to the chassis and over to the axle, and that helps with that side-to-side movement. However, with having that 3-link, as you go up and down and change the geometry of the way that the axle and everything is aligning with the frame and its suspension travel, it does have a little bit of movement side to side wherever that bar, obviously as it goes down, it gets shorter, so it drags the axle over, and then you have ride height. And then when it goes up, it wants to push the axle to the passenger side. So that should be fine with the front end. It's not gonna be too much play in there, and I'll try to factor in all of that to make sure that it is angled right and properly so we don't run into any issues with that. And then another thing that I wanna do on top of this complicated custom one-off suspension system that I wanna build for myself, I also don't love the look. I'm sure you guys have probably seen a lot of these super lifted trucks that have almost like a cage underneath the middle of it. And then you'll see those link bars that come down to the axles. That style has its place, and I don't hate on it. But for this truck, I don't want the showcase to be those link bars. I want it to be the truck and look kind of like a factory truck with a nice paint job and the aftermarket wood bed and everything in it, but then have this really top-notch suspension, custom suspension that we can change the height. And then also the fact that it's going to become an air ride, it's going to ride really well. So it's going to handle well, have that adjustment in the height to it, and then also be super comfortable going over bumps. But with that being said, with those link bars, since I don't really want those to be the showcase, I want to angle my bars so that they're out of the way. So instead of having a big link bar that comes down to the axle and shoots up to the cab, and you see all that busy stuff going on under the chassis, I want to kick my bars up and then run them over. I'm gonna have to put some gussets and strength in it. And I'm probably going a little bit too far into detail for this introduction video on the truck, but I'm a little excited about it. I don't know about you guys. Hopefully you guys are into this stuff too. But yeah, over the next few videos, we're gonna be doing a couple things. I wanna get this truck running again, obviously, and then I'll get it down, do that buzz test on it, and try to get the diagnostics so I know what I'm working with mechanically speaking. We'll get a lot of these brackets and stuff cut off, all the hardware that we're not gonna be using anymore, and just kind of start getting it stripped down. And then, like I said, over time, we're gonna start putting some of these videos for the red truck into the channel and go along and start on this build. So it's definitely something that I'm very excited about, very nervous about too. Definitely a perfectionist with this truck. I don't want to mess anything up. But this is going to be something that I think is a really cool build. It's going to be very unique. As far as I'm aware of, there's nobody else who's done anything like this. I mean, essentially we're going to have probably one of the only F-250 Super Duties that has a cut frame with a step side on it. But then we're also going to have the entire 86 body swap and interior swap into this truck. But it's going to be riding on the 7.3 Power Stroke turbo diesel with the 5-speed and the air ride and the shortened frame and the bed. So there's a whole lot of one-off stuff that's going to be done on this truck. Very excited for it. Again, hopefully you guys are too. And if you want to follow along with this build, definitely subscribe to the channel and be on the lookout for some of these videos to start dropping onto the channel. Thank you guys all who've hung in there for my whole long rant history on this truck. And I'm looking forward to getting this thing built with you guys. So you guys get outside, get wrenched on something, piss off your neighbor, disappoint your mom, and until next time, keep on keeping on.
You can see the riding on the pavement. Young kids, they're growing up in basements. Online, a whole new generation. I'ma make mine, so you better go take it. Always, they need a new replacement. Decentralized, can't contain it. We're changing lives, yeah, upgrading. Call it suicide of the older generation. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet.